Hello, and welcome to Mickaboo's virtual adoption fair. My name is Robin, and I'm a Mickaboo volunteer, just like everyone else in today's event. We are a 501c3 nonprofit located in Northern California. We are dedicated to education, care, rescue, and adoption for companion birds. We are an all-volunteer organization with no paid staff and no physical location, caring for over 450 birds spread across more than 100 foster homes. We rely on donations to be able to serve the birds. And due to the poor state that many of the birds arrive in, our veterinary bills average $50,000 a month. You'll get to meet some of those birds today. In order, we're going to get to meet Mayling the African gray, Chi, Camilla, and Kelly the Budgies, Iko the Meyers Parrot, Feronia the Mealy Amazon, Bonita the Indian Ringneck. Before adopting or fostering, though, you're going to need to go through our approvals process to ensure you're fully prepared to bring a bird home. Birds are complex creatures with needs that are completely different from a cat or a dog. They have their own body language, their own unique needs, and even their own vets. We cover all this and more in our basic bird care class, which is free and held online over Zoom. From there, you'll fill out an application and be matched up with a phone screener. This conversation will take around an hour and will help us gauge your knowledge of birds and bird care. This will also help us understand what you're looking for in a bird and is a great chance to ask any questions you might have. Once the phone screen is complete, the next step is a home visit. Most of the time, this is going to be an in-person visit where a Mickaboo volunteer will visit your home, but sometimes this is done online via Zoom or other virtual conferencing software. Regardless of how it's done, the purpose is the same. It's a way for us to identify potential dangers in your home, help you find a good place for a cage, and get to know anyone who's going to be caring for the bird. We'll want to see any current birds you own, any cages you might have, and get to see the parts of the house where the bird is going to be living. It's not a white glove test, we don't mind a bit of mess, and we don't need to see any bedrooms or private areas. Once the home visit is over, the entire package is sent off to the approvals board for review. Once you've been approved, the coordinator for your first choice of species will reach out to speak with you, letting you know that you've been approved and working with you to find a good match. Approvals aren't per species. Once you're approved, the approval counts for all of Mickaboo. After that, you get to do the fun part, meeting the birds. One of them, hopefully, will be the perfect bird for you, and we're hoping that one of the birds we'll be showing you today might be one of those. I'll be introducing you to them one at a time, but as we go along, please don't hesitate to ask any questions you might have, either via the Q&A tab in Zoom or by commenting on the live stream on Facebook. So first up, we are going to be having Mayling, the African gray, who is being fostered by Vivian. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi, we've got little Mayling hanging out on the cage.
Yes, we do.
So what can you tell us about Mayling?
Oh, yeah. Mayling is adorable. She has a very big personality. She loves to dance. She talks quite a lot. As you can see, she's very active. Unfortunately, right now, some of that activity is a lot of preening. And I can walk through some of the things we're doing to try and kind of shuffle that. Those tendencies also. Ooh, look at her. She also loves head scratches. You can see, sorry, my hand's going to pop in there because she's asking for it. So here we go, Mayling. Good girl.
If you're going to be standing beside her cage, you had better be giving her head scratches.
Oh, yeah. I am on a chair as well to make sure I can reach all the way. Good girl, Mayling. Hi there.
Oh, she's adorable.
Yeah.
So is Mayling a girl for sure, or is this just what we're saying for simplicity?
Oh, yeah. Great question. Mayling is a confirmed female. Unfortunately, she has laid eggs in the past. This is something that I've seen in a lot of other birds as well. This is something that is not optimal. It's not good for the health. And the hormones can lead to some other behavioral things. And this is something we're kind of working with the vet on. But yes, a female. It's
definitely a long-term process, but I'm sorry, I can't get over how cute she is.
She is adorable.
Like, you're not allowed to stop. As long as you're standing there talking, you'd better be scratching my head. How did Mayling come into Mickaboo?
Yeah, her former owner of 20 odd years is going into assisted living. She was clearly well loved, but because that is not a place where you can have pets, me and my household stepped in to take her in, take her to the vet, kind of get her acclimated to being out of his household.
Makes sense. It can often be a really hard transition, especially with these birds that have had 20. Oh my God, literally just walks right up and goes, no, no, keep going.
Yeah. I have a piece of cord here, which she loves, but no, today it's the head scratches.
Today is
Sorry,
head
the hand is
scratches
just kind of
only.
popping out right there.
So if she was with her previous owner for 20 years, do we know how old she is?
I believe she is 23 this year, at some point this year.
So middle age for a African gray, since the lifespan, from what I know, is about 60 years. Obviously, with some
I've
variants.
seen 40 to 50, 60, or even 80 anecdotally, but it seems like a very long lifespan, and it varies just like human lifespans can.
Yep. So normally I would ask, does this bird like head scratches? But I feel like we have the answer already. Does she step up at all?
Absolutely. So when we first got her, the vet recommended a lot of measures to kind of limit the hormonal behavior. So we stopped the head scratching for a little bit, but I think, I think that just was too big of a change for her. So we're introducing that, but to limit her hormone behaviors, we make sure not to touch the rest of her body, no warm or mushy foods and a lot of other things. But yeah, the head scratches definitely. She'll also take food from your hand, but sometimes she'll get mixed up and try to, ask for a head scratch from a celery stick, for example.
just use it to scratch the head. Does
Yeah,
she step up if you offer a hand?
Unfortunately, the stepping up is very inconsistent to non-existent. I've been working on target training her so that she gets used to stepping towards a target stick and getting a reward. And I'm very hopeful that that can lead to stepping up on a hand eventually.
I think we just saw that behavior in action as she attempted to get the camera to scratch her head.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, she's done it with carrots and bananas and celery and strawberries even. Like, no, don't get your head wet.
So what is Mayling's diet like?
Oh, yeah. She is now on mostly pellets, organic Harrison's pellets, sometimes Zupreme or Rowdy Bush natural pellets. I try to meal feed twice a day and then kind of foraging for fresh food in between. Unfortunately, she doesn't like the meal feeding, so sometimes she throws her bowl around until she gets some extra pellets. Hey, Mayling. Okay. Sorry, I know you don't want to see my hand necessarily, but here we are.
The hand is totally fine. It's just very, very funny watching her be so. She knows she is a girl who knows what she wants. And what she wants is your hand scratching her head.
And so to be fair, anybody's hand, it seems, which is really great for whoever is her forever home. And she seems very friendly.
Would you say she's a good family bird?
Yeah, I think she seems to like having multiple people around. I haven't seen signs of her being a one-person bird. No gender preference that I've seen. She's pretty friendly with everybody that she's met in the household. So I think that's a good sign of having multiple people around.
It's a good sign of a well-adjusted bird if they're willing to hang out with just about anyone. And it definitely seems like she is. She's got a really strong personality. Let's go with. Very, very strong personality there. So I know you've talked about it a little bit, that she plucked probably due to stress and hormones. Does she need any kind of like special care, like a special cage setup or anything like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, so when we first got her, I think maybe because her former owner had been hospitalized briefly, perhaps the plucking, may have picked up around then. She did get some hormone shots. Those are done with for now to just kind of get her into a better state hormonally. Right now, it's really about environmental triggers being limited, whether that's touching her body, giving her warm, mushy foods, not having enough sleep, thus thinking it's springtime and, hormones kind of kicking up a notch. So those are all things that a vet should be working with the owner on to limit and keep her hormones in check. but then also balance that against, I think a lot of parrots have tendencies to pluck their feathers out of boredom. And so I think needing to make sure that she's not shredding things that are nest-like, but also making sure she has toys that keep her active and engaged.
Talking about toys is actually probably a good thing. Does she have any favorite toys? Obviously, you want to avoid shredding toys with a bird who has hormonal stuff going on, but does she have a specific thing that she does like to chew on?
Yeah,
Or
no,
play
that
with, I
is a
guess.
great question. And pardon me. And fortunately, she likes a lot of things. Right now, if you look in her cage, there are a lot of metal bells. There are, wood and plastic pieces that aren't as shreddable. Unfortunately, she does like paper and, shreddable materials, plant materials, but that's right now a no-no and likely to be something that should continue. Hi.
She's right back
Yeah.
to, come on, you know what I want.
No head scratch. Yeah.
Why no head scratch? So I know African greys have a bit of a reputation as being talkers. Does Mayling talk at all?
Yes, she says a lot of phrases. She says hello, goodbye, what happened, a lot of other things, a lot of sound effects and whistles as well. And she's now laughing in multiple different people's voices, which, I find cute, but just to be clear, she's going to copy noises from a lot of people. Hi, yes, good girl.
Was that her who just made that noise?
Yeah, she makes a little clucking thing, and she would say it to her owner when her past owner, when he would say, "I love you, Mayling," and then she would say that back to him, from what I remember.
Oh,
yeah.
She's giving a big scratch right now. So does she do? So the other thing that I know about African greys, is she a dancer?
Oh yes, she is most definitely a dancer. She's very active. In fact, you can see all these things I've put on the top to keep her from crawling all over the cage. She's very adventurous. These drapes are usually pulled back so that she can't climb all over those. But yeah, if you dance at her, or if there's music on and the mood hits her, there's a lot of dancing.
She seems like the type. So before we move on to our next bird, do you have any fun stories about her?
Yeah, speaking of the dancing, what our household noticed when she first came in was that if we bumped different types of music, energetic music, and danced with her, she would dance really hard to the point where her beak was kind of knocking on the floor of her cage. And in fact, the first day or two when she did that, I think she hit her head a little bit too hard, and she had some marks around her head. And so now she doesn't dance quite as carelessly, but it's still very energetic and very cute.
She's on a mission right now. She's seen something and she's going to go get that treat. All right. So thank you very much. If anyone has any questions about Mayling, you can leave them in the Q&A and we'll try and circle back near the end. But otherwise, we are going to be hopping over to Chi, Camilla, and Kelly, the Budgies, and their foster, Peggy. And the Budgies are actually going to be joining us via a pre-recorded video because the last time we had them on screen, they refused to go anywhere near the camera and it was impossible to see. Some birds are like that. So you with us, Peggy?
I am here.
So this is actually a really nice video and you get a really good view. So can you tell me which one is which?
The blue one is Chi and the two yellow ones are Camilla and Kelly. My guess is Camilla is probably the one whose tail you see and Chi is the one in the back. Honestly, I can't, other than behavior and how Kelly tends to hang more with Chi, I really can't. Oh, we threw some kale. I really can't tell them apart. So they very well might be siblings. Their coloring is, almost exact.
It's very common in budgies that they're determined more by behavior. But yeah, especially they do have very similar looking markings. So can you tell us how these birds came to Mickaboo?
So these birds came to Mickaboo via a shelter. Their owner had passed away and whoever was, caring for them or had access to the home, surrendered them to the shelter with no information. So we don't know how old they are. We don't even know what their names were.
That it happens more than we would like.
Yes.
And it's always a bit sad not having any kind of information. Based on their markings, they're probably not super young, but it's impossible to estimate beyond that for budgies, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Do we know what genders they all are?
They are all girls.
Okay, I guessed from Kelly, but you can never tell. Kelly and Camilla, it's a mystery.
Yes.
So, very similar questions to the one that we had with Mayling, but do these birds step up?
No, they do not. And they are still very shy they spent about a week at the shelter. They came in to me in a very precarious cage, shall we say. And they're still kind of getting used to this new house that they're in now. It's a little bigger than the one they had been in before. And so they're getting to the point where I can put my finger up on that far perch, which is where they spend a lot of their time. And they don't necessarily all go hide in the corner anymore. So they're looking at me a little bit. They're getting to be a little more trust. And when I feed them and I put the bowls in and out, they don't go fluttering away in fear. So we're getting there, but no step up.
They're getting used to having a person around, but they're not entirely sure they trust you with your pesky
Exactly.
hands.
Exactly. And those two, and the one in the back is probably Kelly.
Oh, Kelly.
Due to that behavior there, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so what is it they are eating and what is their normal diet like?
So their normal diet is they get pellets and seed. Budgies are Alaska grassland birds, so they do require some seed to get their moisture. And then their pellets, I've been giving them rowdy bush nibbles, the small ones, Supreme Natural, and some Harrison's ultra fine. And I'm trying to figure out if there's one they eat better than the others. And then I've just started giving them a little bit of Nutrien, which they really seem to like. I don't think I've met a budgie yet that doesn't. And then in their little bowl there, they have the tray, they have some romaine, some kale that somebody had thrown out earlier, and some broccoli. And then hanging up above, which you probably, it isn't show, is I usually hang something like cilantro or parsley, or if I can get it, fennel greens for them. And they haven't gone after that so much, but I do notice that the greens get moved. So whether they're eating them up in the upper right, there's a piece of romaine. They do eat that on occasion. And they also get another piece of kale, a bigger piece. But they do occasionally eat the romaine, that I do know. And then what they're all feasting on right now is their treat of millet.
I've never met a budgie that doesn't like millet.
Neither have I.
We've got some very cute behavior with them standing real tall there for a second. And there we got a better view of the greenery they've been nibbling. The nice thing about greenery is even if they don't totally eat it, it can kind of be a toy in itself if they're poking at it. So that's always nice. Do they have any toys that they like? Speaking of toys.
They don't play with toys. They have the mirror that you see on their left, that I hear the bell occasionally, but I wonder if it's more that they're going back and forth and it hits it. Behind them, there's a little green mirror. They don't pay any attention to that. And in the last cup, in the foreground, which you can't see, there's up above, there's also a swing. And I think it's Camilla has actually been spending the night on the swing because she's there in the morning. And she's also adventured to the other side of the cage where there's, it's like a surround mirror. And she's been there in the morning, a couple days. So they're starting to explore a little more, and it just kind of reinforces my feeling that the other two are a little more bonded, perhaps.
Yeah, we just actually got to see two of them preening each other, it looked like.
Yes.
Which was very cute.
Yes, but they also squabble at the same time sometimes.
Don't most couples.
Yes.
It also makes me wonder that maybe the bird in the back might like a friend as well. So that's a question we get a lot with budgies is, do they all have to be adopted together? Could one of them be adopted separately if someone has a single budgie that they're looking for a friend?
Single budgies can always be adopted to be a friend. because we don't otherwise adopt singles. I would probably say these three almost ought to go together, only because I would say that Kelly and Chi are kind of bonded and should go together, but there would be no guarantee I'd catch the right one.
Oh, that would be an interesting problem. Well,
yes.
one of you is getting adopted and I can't figure out which one, so behave yourselves.
Yes. I don't know if that's, yeah.
So because budgies they have a bit of a reputation as a starter bird, which is not accurate at all. I really wanted to just emphasize, do you know the size of this cage to give people an idea?
This cage is 18 by 18 by 30 long, and we're looking at the 30 long. We're looking down the length of it in this video.
So yeah, I just thought that might be the case just based on the perspective that we are looking down the long end of a hallway effectively.
Yes.
Which is interesting. Do they normally cluster on the one side because they're shy, or is it just because there's a strange camera on one side?
No, they like that upper perch in that corner. And when I first got them, they were in a slightly smaller cage. Because when I usually get them in for quarantine purposes, if there's a little bit smaller of a cage, if I have to catch somebody right away, it's easier to do usually. And even in that one, they stayed in an upper corner altogether. And it wasn't always the corner away from where people walked. It was the one corner. And this equates to the same corner that the other cage was in, even though it's on a different table in the same room. So they do like to be together. They like to be up high because I think it's the safety in numbers.
Makes sense. They want to cluster together. They want to be high up so they get a better perspective.
And they're prey animals. So you don't want to be on the bottom because something might get you.
Yep. You can kind of see it with them constantly putting their head up to check what's going on and make sure there's no trouble. So we actually do have an audience question, which I'm actually going to answer. Someone asked, do we charge adoption fees? And the correct answer is yes, we do charge adoption fees. It helps us cover some of the vet bills that a lot of birds come in with. That said, we try and price things reasonably. We are significantly cheaper than if you were to go to a breeder, for example. Budgies are $20, and if you adopt a pair, there's a little bit of a discount, and it's $35 for both. So that was something, just context for anyone who's keeping an eye on. For budgies in particular, and for other small birds, we also do require there to be at least 2 budgies in the house when all is said and done. They are flock creatures. They should always be kept together. So you can adopt a single budgie, but only if you already have a budgie waiting at home. So just to give people some ideas there. I did want to ask, just because of the circumstances of how they came in, did they come in as healthy birds? Do we know if they have any health issues, or are they otherwise healthy?
As far as I can tell, they're healthy. They have not been to a vet. They finished quarantine 2 weeks ago, but I've seen no signs of any kind of illness or anything. The only thing is that the day after I shot this video, we had a lot of poop in the bottom from all the millet they ate.
Yep, that happens. That happens.
Oh,
with
and that
birds.
is one of the ways too with all of our birds that you sometimes can tell that there's something going on is if poop changes.
Yep. The really scary one is when you feed them some of the more colorful fruit.
Yes, like
and
red.
And then very important thing that a lot of people don't realize, you should be checking your birds' droppings. It'll give you a really good indication if they're sick, but you should also remember that you fed them blueberries the day before
red,
checking them out.
Or red chard.
Oh, yep. That would be pretty bad.
Yes.
Yeah. Their budgies are fascinating. I did want to ask, do you think these birds have a chance of being trained to step up, or do you think they're more interested in other birds?
I think they might have a good chance. I've had some that have been aviary rescues that they have no interest in you whatsoever. They'll listen to you when you talk. But these, I think, given time, I think they will warm up and come to somebody. And the funny story about that is when they first arrived from their precarious travel vehicle or the little house they came in, I put them in their first cage, and I did it in the bathroom because it's a small room. And if they get away, there's not a lot of places they can land. And she was the first one out, and she got away from me, and she landed on me. And there are other places in the bathroom to land, and she chose to land on me, which kind of tells me she's not entirely scared of people, and that maybe the previous owner did let them out, and it might have been a normal type behavior.
That makes sense. If they're more willing to land on you, they're probably more willing to socialize with humans in general.
Exactly.
We actually had a second question, which we touched on a little bit earlier, but I'm going to expand it a little bit. What were the budgies eating earlier and just down on the tray? And more importantly, how often should they be eating that?
Millet, I once had a vet tell me no more than 2 inches at a time, because she called it birdie crack, because it's like candy. It's like you or I, you wouldn't eat a whole, well, you would if you could, but you don't want to eat a whole candy diet. It's not good for you. So they get it for things like this. I'll give them a little bit to share when we have a budgie in the house that gets adopted, for we have a millet party, but they get it as a little treat once in a while. They do not get it every day. Their normal diet is the greens you see in the bowl, along with the pellets and seeds.
All right. So as we start to wrap up and prepare to move on to our next birds, do you have any fun stories about them?
Well, I guess my fun story was the surprise that they had when they landed on me when we were relocating them. But they are, yeah. But yeah, I've been surprised that I'm assuming Camilla is starting to come over to the other side, and I don't think it's that the other ones push her out. I think she just maybe feels more comfortable, and it's good that she's moving on to the swing, and doing some of those other things that, budgies tend to like to do.
Makes sense. All right. So thank you very much. We are going to be hopping over to our next bird, who is Iko the Meyers Parrot and their foster Vincent. And this is also going to be a pre-recorded video. Are you there with me, Vincent?
Hello.
And we've got another little bird that loves getting head scratches. So what can you tell me about Iko?
Iko is a wonderful little guy. He's a Meyers parrot. They're an African species. He's kind of medium small. His body is about the same size as a cockatiel, but his beak, as you can see, is proportionally much bigger. Iko has a wonderful personality. He loves visiting with people, and he likes visiting with different people. So he would do well in a household where he wouldn't be bonding with one person.
Makes sense. Would work well in a family environment. Does
Yes.
Iko have any special needs or anything that is different from other parrots?
Iko suffered two prolapses of his vent, and that's a medical that's an anatomical condition where the section of their vent of their cloaca and lower intestine actually goes outside of their vent and has to be pushed back in. It caused permanent damage, and he will need somebody who can monitor to see that he's not actively suffering any more prolapses. Besides that, he's a very healthy, happy, well-adjusted little guy.
Makes sense. It sounds like the sort of thing that maybe isn't an active health issue right now, but is an active health concern ongoing.
Yeah,
something to be aware of, but not something you're running to the vet every week for.
Yeah.
Do we know how he came into Mickaboo, if we know that amount of medical history?
So Iko had lived most of his life in a petting zoo. He lived in a petting zoo aviary in Sacramento, associated with a kind of a wild animal aquatic park. And members of the public would walk into this aviary. They'd buy a handful of food at a vending machine outside, and they'd walk into the aviary and feed and handle Iko and his other birds that he lived with, and pet them and snuggle with them and all. And Iko got to the point where he became tired of being handled that much. He was probably increasingly getting sexually stimulated by that, so that was making him increasingly aggressive. Eventually, the petting zoo decided that his aggression was too much to be interacting with people. They let an employee take him home, and he did well with them. And then within a few months of living with them, he suffered the 2 prolapses.
So for those who aren't as familiar with parrots, what we are seeing on screen is the correct way to pet a parrot, because you want to pet them only basically their head. So a petting zoo where people are so often going to be petting the back of the bird can sexually stimulate them and can make them very hormonal. So not great behavior, and probably the reason that Iko suffered the way he did. Do we actually know if Iko is male for sure?
We think he's male based on his behavior, based on some characteristics of his body, and we're not certain about that. We haven't done a DNA test or an endoscopy to prove it, but we certainly think he's male.
Okay. And do we know how old Iko is? I assume he was probably pretty young when he ended up at the petting zoo.
Assuming he was a fledgling when he came to the petting zoo aviary, he's about 7.5 years old, so he's still young.
What's the lifespan like on a Meyers parrot? I don't think they're very common.
The Meyers and other Poicephalus, usually the pet industry says that they live about 30 years, but we've been seeing more and more cases where they live 40 years or even a little bit more with good care, diet, and with good genetic background. So we're optimistic that he's got a long life ahead of it.
Very common. We're seeing a lot of parrots that people have been told this bird has a 10-year lifespan, and the bird's now 20 and they need to find other accommodations because they can't care for it anymore. We do actually have one audience question. Can birds eat cork?
That's a good question. So I want to preface this with, this is an unused wine cork that he's eating. It's never been in a wine bottle. You can buy unused, and unused corks are good for them to chew on. You don't want to give them too many because it can stimulate nesting behavior. But once in a while, he gets a cork as a treat, and he's good about it. So this is actually, it's from a wine, it's from a vineyard, but it's never been in a wine bottle. If you go on to Google and you Google for surplus wine corks, you'll find that some wineries bought more than they needed, and then they sell them as surplus. And that's where we got these.
So is it that he's eating it, or is he just taking it apart?
He's not eating it, he's chewing it, taking it apart. And if you could see the floor underneath him, you would see a bunch of little chunks of cork. that
Making a big mess.
He's making a big mess is what he's doing.
That is the parrot way of life.
Yes. They're very good about knowing when they're chewing on something versus eating something. And he knows, particularly with cork and wooden toys, to chew on them, but not to eat them.
Makes sense. So we've seen that he really loves getting his head scratched. Does he step up?
He's very good about stepping up. He'll step up on the hands and onto wooden sticks. And that's the behavior that we reinforced in him to help him, stay used to living with humans. He likes being handled and likes interacting with people.
He likes getting corks. What is Iko's diet like?
He's on a good diet. He's on a couple of different kinds of pellets, and he likes his veggies. He's meal fed morning and afternoon, and he gets veggies in the meantime. You saw in one of these clips, he's eating a baby carrot. That's one of his favorite things.
Honestly, he seems really cute, and he's got a good diet. I know we really like cork. I'm kind of getting the impression he might be a big chewer in general. Is he Is he going through the toys like a chainsaw?
He likes softer wooden toys. He won't eat, a hard wood that much, but he likes soft wooden hand toys. You see him holding different things in his claw in these videos. Here he's holding the carrot, and he's holding a cork and a nutriberry in other clips. And that's his favorite thing to do. Is he likes wooden hand toys, and he has a foraging medium. It's like a plastic pyramid shaped box in his cage, and he will climb up the side of that, and it's filled with little wooden toys and corks and an occasional food goodie and occasional pistachio shells for variety. And he likes digging through that and foraging out the toys and the food, and that'll keep him busy for hours.
All right. So as we're kind of heading towards the end, I do want to mention Iko is a special needs bird. Special needs birds, we do waive the adoption fees on them, specifically because they're expected to need more vet attention, which does cost more money. So we want to try and even that out a little bit. That said, Iko seems like if he has regular checkups and if he's, being properly handled, he probably shouldn't have significant health concerns. It's just something to be aware of. So as we start to move on to the next bird, do you have any fun stories?
Iko has his own sleeping cage that he likes to sleep on top of. And every night I have my lights set up under Alexa. I can't say it out loud or it'll do something. But I have my lights set up under the Amazon automation tool. And when I call the Amazon automation tool to help do something else, he thinks that I'm going to shut the lights off, and he will automatically fly to his cage before the lights have had a chance to go on. So he knows how that works. He knows what time bedtime is, and he knows that he wants to be on his sleeping cage when it gets dark.
Makes sense. That's actually a good lead into another quick audience question. When we see him standing on the metal like the last clip, is that his cage or is that a play stand?
No, he's standing on a couple of different play stands here. He's got a big stainless steel cage that's about maybe 36 inches wide by 22 inches deep. And he, in all these videos, he's just on a couple of different play stands.
So we didn't get a view of the cage. All right, that should answer that question. So thank you very much. We are going to be heading over to our fourth in the order, although technically one was a 3-in-1. We're going to be meeting Feronia, the Mealy Amazon, who is also going to be a pre-recorded video. And we are going to be talking with the former foster Sarah, since Feronia has now moved to a new foster home. So what can you tell us about Feronia, Sarah?
Hi, Robin. Yeah, Feronia is a Mealy Amazon, and they're the largest of the Amazons. So they can easily weigh 650 grams or more. So they're pretty large, actually bigger than some of the smaller macaws. It's hard to get a sense of her scale without something in the picture next to her, but I think we might see a hand or two in the course of watching a little bit more footage of her. And we say her, but we don't know. We haven't done any testing. So I'm just saying that Feronia is she, but we don't have anything that confirms that. We just have to pick something and go with it. And I also found Feronia a bit of a mouthful, so I shortened it to Fairy.
So Fairy is the largest bird I think we've got, because I'm pretty sure she'd be bigger than an African gray, right?
Yeah, she is. She's probably about 150 grams bigger, roughly, than an African gray.
So can you tell us how she came into Mickaboo?
She came into Mickaboo quite recently, about a couple of months ago. We were contacted by somebody who had 2 Amazon parrots they'd had for about 20 years. And it was a little bit of an unfortunate situation. This lady had been keeping the birds in separate cages, and the care was just inadequate in a lot of ways. They were getting fresh water once a week and only being fed saucerfuls of sunflower seeds, which were kind of pushed in the bottom of the cage on top of the last empty dish. Nothing was being cleaned. The air quality in the room was really poor. I think the lady realized that they just weren't getting adequate care and attention, and was a little overwhelmed in the circumstances and asked if we would take them. So I went to pick them up, and they hadn't been let out of their cage the whole time. They weren't used to being handled. They weren't used to contact. They didn't even have names. We had to name them to put them into,
That is a pretty sad situation all around.
It was.
So I know you mentioned there was a second bird. Are they still with Mickaboo?
They are. The second bird is Apollo, and Apollo is still with Mickaboo. Apollo had some more complex health problems. So when we took them both in after 20 years without a great diet and without a great environment, they both have just general upper respiratory disease. There's really nothing to be done about that in Fairy's case. It just means that her respiratory tract isn't in great shape, but there's no medication to do. It may just ultimately shorten her lifespan a little bit.
Would you say that it's kind of comparable to someone who maybe was a smoker or was working in an environment with a lot of fumes and the way it damages the lung capacity?
Yeah, it's just caused some general damage, and there is no way to fix that. It doesn't impact her ability to move around. It just means that, her airways are not in as great shape as they could have been with better care over that time period. Apollo, the other bird, had an active infection, and so stayed at the vet for more treatment, and we need to figure out what's going on there. The only issue that Fairy had besides the upper respiratory issue was on one of her wings, on her left wing, I think. She had some abnormal feather follicles that were causing deformed feathers. So the vet pulled those out. There were about 3 or 4, and they looked very thick and stubby and misshapen. And they were clearly causing some pain at the follicle. It was all red and swollen. And we suspect that's from cage bar trauma. So she spooked quite easily when she first moved in, and over time that completely went away once she realized she was in a safe environment. But I suspect something was scaring her on some regularity, and she would panic and thrash and hit her wing against the cage bars, which caused the feather damage.
That is a sad situation, but I have to say that last clip was very cute of her really enjoying the shower. It must feel very satisfying having a bath after 20 years.
Oh, she loves showers. She absolutely loves showers. It's been a real joy to see her just like wholeheartedly, full body, just endorsement of she's all in for showers. You could do a shower every day and you'll empty your spray bottle and she still wants more. She just can't get enough, which is great because that's really good for keeping her airways healthy now. And yeah, just her general feather condition. So she's a huge fan of showers, and I would encourage those to carry on.
So we actually have a question from the audience. Are Apollo and Fairy bonded?
No, I don't think so. When I picked them up, I took them home in separate carriers, and they spent a night just in observation in little travel cages. And they had no interest in each other. They were being housed not right next to each other, but there were other furniture and other things between them in the room. So I think they could probably hear each other, but not necessarily see each other. There were also really dusty blankets that were partially covering the cages. So I don't think they had line of sight. And there wasn't any indication that they were bonded or were ever allowed contact, because they were never allowed out of their cages. So they were just 2 Amazons in the same room, effectively.
They were roommates at best.
Yeah.
So one question, and I kind of am trying to figure out how to word this exactly, because it's pretty obvious she's had 20 years in a cage and is not super used to people. How friendly is she? Does she step up on a perch maybe?
Well, I've got some great news on this front, and I'm so thrilled about it. So you're seeing some pictures now of her in her new permanent foster cage. So the darker cage you could see in the earlier videos, that was something that I used the moment I took her home, because once we realized how poor the conditions were, we kind of prioritized just getting her out. And I put her in a cage which had smaller gauge bars, but was at least clean, and it was able to house her short term. And
It's
then
not going to be any worse than what she was in.
No, but this beautiful stainless steel cage. So we were able to pick this up from a donation, and this is much more appropriate for the size of bird. So this is her foster cage she's living in now, and this is her after she moved into it. When I first picked her up, she wouldn't mind if I put my hands in the cage, to mess with her food bowls or do some cleaning. But if I went anywhere near her, she started to open her beak defensively and make little growling noises like, "You can put your hands in here, but please leave me alone." And over the course of about 6 weeks, whilst I was temporarily fostering her, she would get to the point where she accepted that I could tap her on the beak with my finger. But she still wasn't thrilled about me getting too close. I could get really close with my face. She wanted to talk to me and loved attention, and she'd make all these delightful little squeaks and conversation noises, but she didn't really want my hands to get too close. But over the 6 weeks, that really improved. And the new home, it's another lady who's fostering her. She put her on a scale to weigh her using a perch. And once she was on the scale, she picked a foot up and asked to be picked up. And she is now stepping up for her new foster lady, and I'm so thrilled.
That is just such a huge improvement, and it's a great example of the kind of work that Mickaboo does, having a bird that has spent 20 years in a cage on just awful situation, and now she's getting all the showers she wants and stepping up for her person and all that stuff.
Yeah, if you're sitting near her cage, she'll scoot down her cage door to be level with you and come and see what you're doing. And she makes these little cute Amazon noises that are, Mealy Amazons can be really loud. If she's in a loud environment or someone starts making a very loud noise, she will join in. But when that's not the case and everyone else is quiet, she's quiet too, which makes her a much more pleasant Amazon to be around than some others. And she'll make kind of noises if you're talking to her. So she doesn't speak words, but she loves to talk to you. And it's not very painfully loud, which is great.
She talks, but she doesn't talk.
Exactly.
So as we start to kind of wrap up and move on to our next bird, do you have any fun stories?
When we moved her, I didn't want to push her in any way. I just wanted her to have positive experiences whilst she was adjusting to life in a different home. So when we moved her and I had to put her in a carrier to go to her new home, I had managed to get her to step up on a perch a couple of times. So I got her to do that to try and transport her into the carrier. I really didn't want to have to towel her and stress her out. So we had to go, and I approached the carrier with the perch. And she wasn't too excited about going in the carrier, but she really didn't have any options because I put a towel behind the perch. So she hung upside down off of the perch in her attempts to try and avoid getting in the carrier. So she was loaded into her carrier in an inverted position off of her perch, but it wasn't too dramatic and it went smoothly without upsetting her. So I'm calling it a win.
I bet she's real happy she ended up going in that carrier. Things worked out for her in the end.
They really did. She's doing great. And she's even eating more veggies. She loves yellow peppers and carrots. Yeah, she's really been she's a super sweet bird, so I'm really thrilled for her that she's been chewing on her toys. She loves wooden toys. She's chewing stuff up and enjoying having a variety of toys available to her. She's just doing great.
It is fantastic seeing such an improvement. So we are actually going to move on to our final bird, who's going to be Bonita the Indian ringneck and foster Heidi. Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
So we've got Bonita on the screen right now. For those who aren't super familiar with parrots, how do ringnecks compare to the other birds we've seen?
In terms
of size.
Yeah, in terms of size, they are bigger than a cockatiel, They are definitely smaller than African ringneck. So they're just in between. They have very long tail feathers. So if you count those in, they're of course big ones. But this is mainly tail feathers. So their size is somewhere that's slightly bigger than a cockatiel.
So small to medium-sized birds, depending on what you're used to. So what can you tell us about how Bonita came into Mickaboo?
So Bonita came to Mickaboo because she also suffered a prolapse, similar to what Vincent has described. And this was her second time that she had a prolapse. The first time she got some surgery on it. And again, this is triggered by too many hormones. I'm not sure what happened, but when we picked her up, it was already in an emergency situation because the prolapse was pretty advanced. And so she needed to get to the emergency vet right away. And when we arrived there, she was almost not responsive anymore because she was also dehydrated. And but luckily, we have great vets that we can work with. And she stayed at the vet for about 4 weeks. She got great treatment, fluids, medication. The prolapse was pushed back in, and it hasn't been showing anything like that since then. And so she's been with us for a few months. But it's something that she's prone to, and it's something that the potential adopter needs to know and be really careful about to manage her hormones. And I can tell a little bit about that, how to do that. Because like I said, we didn't have a problem. I'm so glad to see her fully recovered, and she's a really sweet bird. She likes, she really reacts to men. I found it didn't really matter who it was. She gets into this like, oh, this is a man, that might be my mate kind of situation. And that's why you have to turn around right away and try not to encourage this at all. And luckily, she doesn't do that with any women. So I would suggest, that if she could find a home where a woman is the main caretaker, that would be the best for her.
She needs to hang out with the ladies. Is she herself a lady?
She is, because Indian ringnecks, or ringnecks in general, are one of the few species that are dimorphic, meaning you can distinguish between male and females. The males have a very distinct ring. That's why they're called ringnecks. And you can see it with her. She has a very faint ring. So that's clearly a female.
Yeah, it's barely visible for me, at least. I can only kind of see it. Do we know how old she is?
Yeah, she's between 8 and 10 years old. So in terms of ringneck lifespan, that's like the first third. Ringnecks typically get around 30, but they can also get older, up to 40 years old.
Makes sense. So I know in a little bit earlier in the video, we saw her step up. Will she step up to people she really likes, or is she the kind of bird that'll step up for just about anyone?
When she came, she stepped up right away. She stepped up for the vets. She stepped up for us. I think once she knows she feels safe, she would step up to anyone. She's just used to it. But she also steps up on a rope perch. So it's really easy to get her around. Yeah, once she sees the hand, she steps up. I would say she will probably do it for everyone.
Yeah, as long as she feels comfortable, she'll step right up. It looks like she's looking at a little box there. What is that box?
Oh, that's a play box. That it's for foraging. There's like little treats in there and things, but she's not that interested. I have another ringneck that's really into this box, but she is a bit she's really curious, but she doesn't really play with things that much. I mean, she just likes to know what you're doing, and she checks things out. She likes these little bamboo boards, as a foot toy. She also likes the bell that's in her cage, but she in general she doesn't play as much as other birds with toys necessarily. But she likes to explore.
She likes to explore, and she likes to hang out with people, is my immediate guess from all this.
Absolutely, yes.
Does she talk at all?
yes, she can say something that's really cute. And she says, what you doing? She says that in the morning, when you come in and you see her, when she sees her mirror, like her image somewhere in the mirror, but something that's mirroring, she says that. So that's the thing when she gets excited and say, oh, there's something. She says, what you doing? And she can do it in all kinds of intonations. She recently said something different from that, which I couldn't quite understand yet, but I think it means something. So we'll figure that out, what that means. I'm sure that she will also pick up new sentences in some time.
So we actually just had a question that had some amazing timing. Someone just asked, does she like shoulder surfing? And
Oh,
then she
yeah,
immediately
she
stepped
does.
up.
Yeah, she does. Unless, you know, she steps up on your shoulder very easily, but then she sees something that she wants to fly to, then she just flies off. But just recently, I took a shower with her. She loves showers. So what we do is we have a shower perch in our shower, and I take her along for a shower, and she just loves that. And then we have another tea perch when she's done with her shower. And then recently she flew to my shoulder, and she just wanted to hang out there the entire time. So there wasn't anything that she was curious about. So she just like to be with me. So yeah, showers is like something like, I would say like every 2 to 3 days is something that she really enjoys.
So on the screen right now, it looks like she's picking at a corn cob as a toy, but what is her diet like?
So she likes a lot of fruits and veggies. We're still discovering what the whole range is, but she loves bananas, apples, blueberries, sweet potatoes, bell peppers. She also likes lettuce chunks, which is most ringnecks don't like lettuce at all, but she kind of chews on them, and I hope she gets a few of those. She eats nutrient cakes as well. And we make birdie bread, and we have this great recipe on the Mickaboo website, and we even have a video about it if you're curious how to make it. This is something that has all great ingredients in it, and she loves that. She's not that keen on pellets, although she does eat Harrison pellets and Rowdy Bush pellets, but we kind of have to mix them in a little bit more so she eats them more. But because she's a great veggie and food eater, it's not such a big deal that she doesn't eat that many pellets. But you know, it's good to have some of those.
Yeah, it's good to have them as like a core of the diet, but vegetables are also super important. So it's great to see that she has a really good diet overall. So I'm just looking over everything. She seems like a very friendly bird. Can you describe, I know you said female. Do you think she would be better as a best friend bird for someone who's looking for a companion, or do you think she'd be better as like a family bird?
I mean, I think she doesn't really make a huge difference between, it's not like with some of the bigger birds where they just have one favorite person. So I think she would be great with different people. The only issue, like I said, it needs to be managed in terms of when she gets hormonal. So you can tell, you know, I don't know if I was showing in the video, but when she starts to kind of duck down and make this, you know, eye pinning thing, then that means, oh, she thinks you're going to be her mate, and you have to really discourage that. So, and also in terms of other birds, I would say it depends on who she or what kind of bird she takes. We have another conure, and she was really interested in him, flying to his cage all the time and potentially thinking that could be a mate as well. But then we have another ringneck that she's not really interested in terms of, love affairs of some kind. She just kind of say, oh, this is another bird, right? So I can get along with that. We haven't tried yet to bring them together. This is the kind of thing that you have to be really doing very carefully, step by step. But it depends, I would say, on the situation. If she could get along with another bird and with different people, I would say, yeah, as long as she's not doing her mating behavior, she could probably get along with different people. Probably also kids, because she has never really bitten, although I do want to say that every parrot has the potential to bite. And, you know, if let's say she's defending, if you want to, she's flying on a different cage and she's just curious about it, and you want to get her away from it, and she doesn't want to do that, then maybe she would potentially nip a little bit. In that case, I would then use the perch. But once you interact with her with the hand or on the shoulder, she has never really bitten, which is great.
She seems like a really friendly little bird. So before we wrap up, do you have any fun questions? Or sorry, do you have any fun stories?
Oh,
for us?
yes. Bonita is really cute because she is not a morning bird. So when she currently she sleeps in a different carrier cage. So we have that set up as a sleeping cage. So she gets her peace and quiet because we have an open floor plan. So she goes to a different room and then she gets her peace and quiet. So in the morning, we bring her over. And I just want to say that behavior that you see there, that ducking down, that's like, okay, that's hormonal. So that's something that you want to discourage. So it's just showing there that what you don't want to see doing her. Yeah, so when she gets out of that cage, we open the cage and she sees her food and everything, her breakfast in the other cage. And she's like, really? I need to get out of here. Give me a few more minutes, right? I need to wake up. And it's just so funny to see because I think, if you a person who's also not a morning person, she would be a great match. So that just takes a little bit of time.
I've never heard of a bird being a morning person before, but now I have.
So she's not a morning person. She just takes time to really wake up a bit. And then she at some point she moves on to her breakfast and then she's really into it.
So I've got one more audience Q&A before we move on. And it's, do you think Bonita would enjoy a large family, mostly female, with 2 budgies?
Yes, I think that would absolutely work if you keep the budgies and Bonita in different cages and make sure that she doesn't, fly over to them. If she decides, okay, one of them could be their mate, then you have to just discourage that she would fly there and then gets worked up on that. I'm not sure if she would do that because it's a budgie is different size than she is. She might not really recognize that as a potential mate. But yeah, I mean, if it's mostly female members in the family, I think that would be great for her.
All right. So thank you very much for introducing Bonita to us. And we are going to be moving on to the end of our presentation because that is all the time we have for today. We do have time for a couple more questions. We're going to be sticking around. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the Q&A. We've got a bunch of volunteers who are monitoring that, and we'll be sure to answer them throughout. We're also going to be running a survey to get feedback on today's adoption fair, which you can find shared in the chat. We'd really love if you could fill it out. And if you fell in love with any one of these birds, if you saw one of them and went, that's the perfect one for me, please contact us. If you haven't started the adoption process, you can get started by signing up for our basic bird care class at mickaboo.org. It's under the classes tab. Our next class is actually tomorrow, so you can sign up right now. And if no one seemed like the correct bird for you, you can take a look at the others on our website, again, mickaboo.org. There are a lot more birds who need their forever homes, and we have a bird for pretty much everyone. Just a few more things before we sign off. First, thank you for attending the adoption fair. Our next adoption fair is going to be on May the 27th, so we hope to see you there as well. Second, please remember that we are a donation-funded nonprofit, and you can support the work of Parrot Rescue, including care for all the birds you met today. For example, Feronia, Bonita, and Iko at mickaboo.org/donate. We'd be really grateful for your support. If you have any comments or questions for how we can improve for next time, please fill out the post-fair survey if you've joined us via Zoom, or you can always send us an email. We're always looking for any improvements we can make. Last but not least, I want to extend a huge thank you to our foster parents and their birds for being brave enough to come on video, and to the other volunteers who've provided technical support to keep this event running smoothly. Please stick with us through the credits to see who they all were. And we're going to keep monitoring the Q&A for a bit longer in case anyone has any leftover questions. So now, roll credits.